Hello everyone, this is the Human Commerce series. I'm Lucy Norris, Head of Content and Communications, and I'm really excited to have on the Managing Director at Oregon Technology, Greg Parker. Now, Greg, I believe that you're going to bring something that no one has spoken about just yet throughout this series, some really interesting insight and also some talk on the power of technology. So, Greg, great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Lucy.
Now, you've developed a solution at Oregon Technology when it comes to consumer profiling called the Sense Engine. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. The Sense Engine is something that we developed in-house, and basically it analyzes the personality of millions of consumers in any location on the planet. So it's kind of a combination of very big data, artificial intelligence, and then some own tech that we developed in-house. And we're kind of pioneering a field that we like to call social psychometrics. So it's the concept of personality matched language. And that's where consumers respond much better when the personality of the brand or of the communications of the brand match their own personality. So you get this kind of nice feedback loop where people are really engaging much better with what they see because it's targeted directly at their needs and their wants. So it's really clever.
We were fortunate to actually see this at work and work alongside you as you developed a case study for one of our clients. And it was fascinating because from a perspective of what we've been doing here at Human Commerce, you know, we want brands to have a humanized sort of approach to how they're marketing to us. But sometimes what will happen and what we've noticed is that the way that the brand is actually being marketed isn't exactly how the consumer speaks or acts or behaves, because consumers are constantly changing. So how do you help brands get closer to their consumers throughout using this technology?
Yeah, I mean, the point you make is absolutely right, that even if we try really hard to understand our consumers through, we develop various personas, and we can use other kind of other methods of understanding them, we don't really understand their personalities. And if you really want to know your audience in depth, and you lower then your acquisition costs, you increase loyalty, you boost engagement, all of those things, you have to really, really dig deep, go far beyond the current methodology that's used. So brands have used consumer research for years and years to get close to consumers, and traditionally that's been questionnaires, surveys, focus groups, very kind of labor intensive, but also methodology that we believe is susceptible to something called the observer effect, where just by asking a question or just by talking to somebody about something, you're already changing their response. So we kind of get rid of all of that by not asking any questions. We go much further and we just analyze personality traits of an audience. So we're not really interested in what words they're using, what kind of preferences they've got. We go much deeper into their personality, and from this kind of data-led analysis, then we provide a complete picture of the audience. And from that, it's, what are they like as people? What are their needs? What are their wants? What messages will they respond to? What things should you avoid, perhaps? Or what imagery will resonate? And we can even infer kind of purchasing preferences, or you could even go as far as voting preferences if you wanted to. So it's very powerful, but it's very much driven by data.
It's interesting when we think about technology and humans, and in some ways there's this power struggle between which will take over, what do we need more of, and what you're able to do, and I've seen it at work, is so specific, it's so granular, it's so niche. Why do you think that consumers will want brands to use technology like this so that they can have messages communicated in a way that's actually going to be a way that they want to hear them?
I think if you're a consumer, and you touch on this in your report, that the availability of e-commerce these days is enormous. There's so much to choose from, and where do you even start if you're a consumer looking for something? So I think anything that is closer to how you feel, that speaks to your needs and your wants, they might even be quite specific. Anything that can do that is going to make you feel more engaged, happier with your buying process, probably more satisfied, and then probably you're more likely to either refer your experience, or you're more likely then to shop again and keep up that loyalty. So I think looking and sounding like your target audience is the best way to succeed in e-commerce. So to do that, you really have to understand in depth what your consumers are like. And are they inquisitive? Do they have a strong desire for love? Are they open to new ideas? All of these, we look at up to 51 personality traits. So it's a pretty, as you know from the work we did recently, it's a very broad report. It's a very broad piece of work. But from that, we can tell brands then exactly how to look, how to sound, what kind of imagery, and all of that to really resonate with their target audience. Because we want, like we said, we want the consumers to get that warm feeling inside that this is what they kind of, they may not expect it, but when it does come, they think this is fantastic. This is exactly what I want. And that really drives those levels, that kind of serotonin, all of those things that are very positive in a buying pattern. So yeah, for us, it's important to have this human aspect, but we can use technology to try and recreate that. So we still need people, clearly. We still need experienced marketing professionals to then interpret our suggestions and turn those into content and communication. We can't do that, and technology can't do that yet, maybe in 20 years. But we can certainly provide the data and the basis on which to make decisions, and then from there, it's up to the marketing professionals. So we're kind of an upstream business, if you like, when it comes to marketing.
I've just actually realized this. I was writing an article earlier about from bricks to clicks, and brands transitioning right now, what they're going through and how they have to put their content out there so that it can resonate with their audience. And it's not just enough to put an image there. Looking at the name of your technology, the Sense Engine, it makes me realize right now, that the main sense that we're using is sight when we're on a website. We can't touch it, we can't feel it, we can't smell it. So all of that needs to be portrayed throughout the technology that you're using so that we can market it in that way. What else would you say on top of that when it comes to brands considering this technology? Why is it important for them to use something similar in order to set themselves apart?
I think it does come down to, as we said earlier, breadth of choice for consumers is absolutely vast. You can buy products, you can buy lookalike products, but I think you have to think much more holistically these days for e-commerce. You can't just think about shifting X product at the cheapest price or with the quickest delivery. It's a much more complete experience that consumers are looking for. They may not actively stop and think, I really want a nice shopping experience, so I'm going to go with Next, for example. But actually, when they do engage with a brand and they get that nice, complete experience, they're much happier as a result. So, if you get a nice email communication, if you get nice ads served to you on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, and then you get engaged in a buying process, which is rewarding, which has lots of information about stock availability, about when you might expect stuff, what something might look like when you're wearing it or when you're using it. And afterwards, it comes in nice packaging. You get lots of updates about the product. You get lots of future updates about things that are coming afterwards. All of these things are really important, and we sit, like I said, we sit slightly upstream from this process, and that we really say to a brand, this is what the people that you want to engage with are like. So we say to brands, pick your audience really carefully. And once you've defined that audience and you're sure who you want to be selling to and talking to, we'll profile that group of customers for you, and then we'll tell you exactly what they're like. And as you saw from the work we did before, there are many, many different variables, and some consumer groups have some very, you might consider unusual personality traits, but actually, everything goes. And it's the reason that we think it's unusual perhaps is that it stands out so much against averages. But averages, 60 million people in the UK, Obviously, the averages are going to be very flat and there's nothing particularly interesting. But when you take groups aside and you work out what's driving them, is it a social issue? Is it a value issue? Is it a tech issue? There's some very different needs. And the people that are responding to those products and those solutions have themselves some very different personalities. So it's a really interesting work. And that's just in the UK.
What are some ways in which brands are taking that information that you're offering them and actually going towards humanizing their brand or humanizing their online presence? You know, what are you seeing working well? What are some ways in which they're even just at this point considering to start to incorporate in their strategies?
It could be really simple things. It could be using different colors, for example, in imagery and photography, because some people respond better to greens and blues, others might respond better to pinks or reds. It sounds, how to explain this? It sounds like it's kind of guesswork, but actually it's very data driven. So we know that certain personality groups will respond better to certain colors. You know, there's been lots of research done over the years about how people respond. Obviously, as you said earlier, we can't do smell, we can't do touch, all of these things through e-commerce yet. So at the moment, it's just what you see. And we know that people will respond much better, for example, to imagery of perhaps an individual on their own with a dog or working in nature or perhaps walking in fields than they will to imagery of a person with a family around them or in a social context, you know, in a bigger group. It's all about the more you understand that audience, the more you understand the people, then you can really tweak what you use in terms of imagery and messaging. And we found, you know, for example, again, some personality groups might not be interested in lots of detail. They just want to know, what is this product? What is the price? When can I get it? Great. Other people might be more interested in knowing lots of technical detail. You know, how's it made? Where's it made? What's it made of? How do I recycle it? All of these things. It just very much depends. But as soon as you understand the people that you want to buy, then it's much easier for us to say, okay, you understand these people, here's their personality, these are the things that you should consider doing. And actually, you'll find that you've got much stronger engagement and loyalty. And loyalty is very important because customer acquisition is so expensive.
Yeah.
But once you've got consumers, you really need to hold on to them.
And we've just launched our own report, Human Commerce, alongside the video series. What are your thoughts and takeaways from the campaign and the report?
I think one of the most important points for me that I completely agree with is that brands have to delight their consumers. It's something I talk about quite a lot. And I think as I've said, it's quite a complex journey if you want to really delight consumers. But again, knowing more about them, it really helps you do that. I think tech will help with that in some ways. You know, as you say in the report, there are things being developed that help with, you know, delivery, stock availability, all of these things. But really delighting your consumers is very important. And the brands that can really delight will set themselves apart from all of the others. Because, as you say, more and more shoppers online, you know, with lockdowns, you've had volumes have gone up significantly, and again, they're going to stay up. So I think we're seeing quite a shift. We've been seeing a gradual shift in consumer behavior over 20 years, but actually we're going to see a very marked shift in totality this year, and it's going to stay to a greater extent. I think it's going to stay that way. So the brands that really want to succeed have got to be working very hard on all aspects of that journey for the consumer. But the delighting one is the one that really stands out for me. And I think because it resonates the most with what we do, and it makes it easier to draw the parallels between what we do and then how brands get there.
Well,
So for
great.
me, that's probably the most important thing.
It's been a
And also,
oh, sorry.
sorry,
No.
I would also, no, I was also going to say, you know, I wouldn't, I'd say to brands, don't try and be all things to all people. Pick your audience really carefully and then unashamedly work flat out to please them. That doesn't mean you can't have multiple instances of a brand under different guises doing that, but I think knowing exactly who you want to please and then working out to please them is it's a very honest way of doing it.
Excellent. And I love the fact that we've actually been able to go through this journey with you, see how the technology works and see how brands can actually use it as well. So I want to thank you. Thank you for joining us. How can people find out more about Oregon Technology?
If they just go to oregontech.co.uk, they can have a look. We've got some case studies there. We've got a couple of short videos, so it's not lots and lots of reading for those that don't like it, because we know some people don't like it, so that's fine.
You've already done the Sense Engine on them, is that right?
Exactly, yes. We did study marketing professionals, yes. I won't tell you what we thought about them. But...
Well, thank you so much, Greg. Great having you on this show, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Pleasure. Thank you, Lucy.